One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Name for the record, please.
Joseph Lyle Menendez.
And you may continue your direct examination.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, after your parents died, did your relatives start arriving in town?
Yes.
And where do most of your relatives live?
New Jersey, most of them.
And some live in other states?
Florida and a few other states. Arizona.
And did they stay in the same location you stayed?
We all stayed at the Lodge Hotel at first.
And did you move to some other location?
And then we moved to the Bel Air Hotel.
Did all of your relatives move, or just you and your brother move?
I don't think, just my brother and I moved, and where the family would meet and sort of gather sort of changed to that hotel, but I think they still had the rooms they reserved at the Bel Air, pretty sure.
And who made the decision that you should go to the Bel Air Hotel?
One of my dad's cousins.
And why did he want you to stay there?
I believe he thought it was more secure and more conducive to open family gatherings, since they did have a large room kind of separated from the other guests.
And several days after your relatives arrived, did you have a conversation with your Aunt Marta?
Yes.
And what is her relationship? She's your aunt. Whose sister is she?
My dad's sister.
And did that conversation concern the financial aspect of your mother and father's situation?
Yes.
And where did that conversation take place?
That took place at one of the hotels. I'm not sure if it was her room or my room.
Was she discussing the size of your parents' estate?
Yes, she had a whole list of papers and things to show us.
And did that discussion also concern whether there was any insurance?
Yes.
Now, when your Aunt Marta was telling you about the information about the estate, did you make any comment to her with regard to the will?
Yes, we told her.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
What did you say?
Same objection.
Sustained.
Before your parents died, what did you believe with regard to whether you were in or out of the will?
We were out of the will.
And how is it that you came to believe that?
That's what my dad told me, that I was out of the will.
Did he explain to you why?
No, but I sort of realized it. He mentioned it every so often, and I realized it as we went along.
Why did you think you were? This is just something that you figured out on your own, something you
No,
believed?
this was things that he would say about my girlfriends and my girlfriend's situations led me to believe he just didn't want them to get his money. And so I didn't see it as a permanent situation, just until he felt that I married properly.
And did he have more than one discussion with you about being out of the will?
There weren't really discussions. My dad would just say that if he was sarcastic and maybe even angry.
And over what period of time have he been telling you that you were out of the will, if you remember?
Since the beginning of '89, maybe even a little before.
And did you express this state of mind to your aunt?
Yes.
And did your aunt tell you something about an insurance policy with the company, with your dad's company?
Objection, Harrison.
State of mind again, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Did you have any information before your parents died with regard to a $5 million insurance policy that your father's company was to pay for him?
Yes.
And how is it that you had information about that policy?
Just through things that were said in the house. Mostly my mother arguing with him about the appointments that he continued to miss or cancel.
What did you believe about the $5 million insurance policy? Did you believe that it was in effect or not
At what time?
prior to your parents' death?
It wasn't in effect because he hadn't taken the physical.
And were there discussions in your home about why he hadn't taken the physical?
Yes.
And what were the reasons stated that why he hadn't taken the physical?
Objection, Harrison.
State of mind again, Your Honor.
Can you spell out what time frame you're talking about in these conversations, please?
Did your father have some health problems in January of 1989?
Yes.
What kind of health problems did he have?
He had some, I don't know if I'm using the right words, but heart palpitations of some sort in the night. And so to be safe, he checked into a hospital near Pico Boulevard. And I found out, I believe the next day, which was Super Bowl, I guess Super Bowl Sunday. And so I was with some friends at the house, and then I left because I found out my dad was in the hospital, and I went and I spent the Super Bowl with him, and it was some sort of a heart trouble, which he was keeping secret.
Did he express to you why he wanted to keep it secret?
Yes, because
Why is that?
Objection, Harrison.
State of mind again, Your Honor.
All right, it's not received for the truth of what was said, just to reflect the state of mind of the witness. And again, could you specify when this occurred?
After your father had these heart problems and was in the hospital, were you given some instructions with regard to whether this was to be talked about openly or not?
yes, he was extremely concerned that it would get out that he may have some heart trouble, and the stock would drop in his company significantly, since the whole house of cards was held up by him, he felt. And were they to find out that the chairman, chief executive, had health problems, the stock would drop. And so I believe nobody at his company knew, maybe his secretary and just myself and Mom, Miracle.
And was there any connection between these heart problems and him getting the insurance policy?
Yes, the only connection was that he felt that he wanted to give as much time as he could, a little more time. I guess they wanted him to take the physical in the spring when he was supposed to take it for the insurance policy. And he was putting it off and just wanted to let as much time go by as he could.
Is this what he was saying to you?
This is what he was saying to my mother when she was really pretty obsessively badgering her about the appointments that he was missing, and that I guess someone at the company was setting up for him, and he just wouldn't go.
So this was a topic of conversation on more than one occasion between your mother and father?
Yes.
And when your mother would talk to him about taking the physical and urging him to do so, would he use the health thing as a reason for not doing it? Or?
Yes. And he was a little suspicious of her.
How do you mean he was a little suspicious of her?
Because she was so insistent that he take the physical, and, you know, she was unstable. And he was sarcastically implying that maybe, you know, he was just, seemed to be implying that maybe he shouldn't take the physical if she wanted him to take the physical so bad.
Sort of joking with her about it?
Yeah.
And After your father died, did your Aunt Marta suggest to you that you should be able to get this insurance? That the company should pay off on this policy?
Yeah, she said she was the one that arranged the insurance. Oh, you mean the $5 million?
Right.
She didn't seem to understand what I was trying to explain to her. She seemed to feel that the company should pay it anyway, since she said it was in the contract. Even though he didn't take the physical, who cares? He would have passed, and she should get it. So I told her I didn't think so.
So did she then continue negotiations with the company with regard to that?
Yes.
Lack of foundation.
Sustained, the answer stricken.
Did she report back to you that she was still attempting to get the company to pay off on that policy?
Yes.
And did she tell you about another insurance policy? One that she'd written for your dad?
Yes.
And did you know about that one before your parents died?
No.
And do you know what the amount was on that one?
Fine.
Sustained.
After your parents died, did your Aunt Marta tell you how much that insurance policy was?
She did.
And how much was it?
I believe it was, between my brother and myself, a total of $650,000, I believe.
And had you ever heard about that policy before their death?
No.
You said that you believed that you were out of the will when your parents died. Is that correct?
Right.
Did your relatives find a will for your parents?
Yes, they did.
And was it a new will or one that had been made up some time ago?
No, it wasn't. Over 10 years old, I believe.
And did they continue looking for a newer will?
Yes, they also believed that there could be a new will, and so we were looking for a new will.
At some point, did you receive some information about some information in a computer that seemed to relate to a will?
Did I find some information?
Did you receive some? Did somebody tell you about
Yes.
that? And was this computer in your parents' bedroom?
That was my mother's IBM computer.
And did you have a computer of your own in the house?
Yes.
And what kind of computer did you have?
That was the Macintosh that I had bought at Princeton.
And when you bought the Macintosh at Princeton, who used it primarily?
Mostly my friends used it. It pretty much didn't get used, actually. But if someone wanted to do a paper and they knew how to use it, it was fine with me.
And did you ever use the IBM computer that was in your parents' bedroom?
I didn't know how to use it because you need to know the special. It seemed complicated.
Did your dad use it?
No, he didn't know how to use it either.
Who used it?
Mom had some knowledge on how to use it. Not a whole lot, but she was able to do some work with it.
And did you receive some information while you were still in California about efforts to pull information out of the computer, out of the IBM computer?
Yes.
In Vegas to time.
All right, one step at a time. Objection overruled. Answer will stand.
Yes.
And your parents died on Sunday, is that correct?
Yes.
And when did you leave for New Jersey?
Friday, I believe.
Between that Friday, which was the 20th, that Sunday, which was the 20th, and the following Friday, is that when you received information about what was in the computer?
Yes.
And what information did you receive? What information did you have about who was looking in the computer?
Well, a bunch of my relatives, I know Carlos Baralt, the executor, was looking and was working on the computer. My Aunt Joan, my Aunt Pat, I believe my Aunt Terry and a cousin of my dad's, Carlos Menendez. And there may have been probably my Uncle Brian also, actually. There may have been more, but I don't know.
So everybody was,
I spent a few hours checking all the files and going through it.
and were you given some information in terms of what they were able to find in the computer?
Yes.
And what were you told?
Objection, hearsay.
State of mind again, Your Honor. Between the Sunday your parents died and the Friday that you left for New Jersey, did you receive some information with regard to what your relatives had found in the computer?
Yes.
And do you remember exactly when that was?
That was during family discussions we had after they had looked through the computer, which was, I think it was later in the week, but it could have been as early as Wednesday. I'm not sure.
And did you receive this information when you were sitting with a group of people, or was it just one person talking to you?
It was just a group of people, and especially Carlos Menendez had a big interest. And, everybody had worked on it, the computer, and so it was being talked about, and I was there.
And what did they say about what they'd found in the computer?
That they had found basically that there was nothing in the computer of any interest other than these 3 entries.
And what were the 3 entries, if you remember?
My memory is it was Menendez, and then the word will, and then the word list.
And were these 3 entries the focal point of the interest of the relatives in terms of spending all of the time trying to get the information out of the computer?
That's what they were basically talking about, was those 3 entries, yeah.
And what did they tell you about those entries?
Just that they had found the 3 entries, at least those were the ones that they were discussing, and that there was nothing in the entries, that they had pulled up the files, and that they were basically completely empty, and it seemed like somebody at one point had been doing something with those entries, and I guess had either erased it or something had happened, because there were just like very little bytes under the entries.
All right, this conversation, again, is not received.
Was any discussion about whether, if there was a will in the computer, it would be a valid will?
Yes.
And this was still in California prior to you returning to New Jersey on Friday?
Yes.
And what was that discussion with regard to the validity of the will?
That was, essentially, I was just listening mostly to Carlos Baralt, who was the executor. He was the only one handling the affairs of the estate. And it was, he said that a will on a computer would not be valid whether they found one or not. And he said because there had to be a signature and witnesses, and that it was, basically he said that it was interesting, but that he wasn't going to waste any more time on it. And
Were some arrangements made for someone else to see if they could retrieve the information?
yes,
Okay, and were those arrangements made while you were still in California or after you went to New Jersey, or do you know?
I'm not sure exactly when.
Okay. And what arrangements were you aware of at that time?
Well, really shortly after that, either in California or right when they got back, I believe. Somebody wanted an expert to check the computer more thoroughly, and it was Eileen's responsibility. She's a cousin of mine who works with IBM, to find somebody, she lives in New Jersey, but to find somebody in California who could come out inexpensively and just double check the computer, I guess.
Did you make any efforts before you left California to find out what was in the computer?
No.
And when you found out that Eileen was going to make some arrangements, did you talk to her about it or ask to be present?
No, I found out about the arrangements all in, I believe, the same conversation in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I don't know if the arrangements were made in California, but I found out about them in New Jersey.
And how is it that you found out that Eileen was going to have somebody come and look at the computer? Was
There
it a
was-
discussion just with you and Eileen, or were there other people around?
No, there were, I believe we were at my Aunt Terry's house, and there was a big, Eileen was very upset, and there was a big problem, and there were basic discussion about the fact of how upset Eileen was that she had set up somebody to go look at the computer, and my dad's cousin had, behind her back, set up his own expert to look through the computer. And she had gone through all this trouble, and why was he doing that? And that's where I learned it for the first time.
And what's your dad's cousin's name?
Carlos Menendez.
And so was this a fairly big event in terms of her being upset? Was she making
It
a
was
big deal
fairly
of it?
big. My Aunt Terry and my Uncle Carlos, they were both the executors actually, stayed out of it completely because it was more a personal thing than anything that had to do with the estate.
Being personal in terms of Eileen being angry that
Right.
this had happened? And after you found out that Carlos Menendez had made some arrangements with regard to the will, did you do anything with regard to the computer? Excuse me, with regard to the computer. Did you do anything?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, once I found out that Carlos had hired his own expert, I wanted to know why, and I was suspicious, so I believe I called my brother first, and talked to him about it briefly just to see if he knew anything, and he said, basically just verified that Carlos had his own expert set up to come that Friday, and I think this was a Wednesday. And that Friday, and that Erik was going to be there and let him in the house.
Was that a surprise to you?
Well, at that point, I knew from Eileen that that's basically what I had heard, but I got the details, I think, from Erik, and certainly a surprise to me. The whole thing was a surprise to me, actually.
And what did you think about it?
I thought that Carlos was maybe, up to something, and was suspicious. I had known that my father didn't trust him, and I really didn't trust him. I didn't have anything against him, I just didn't know. So,
What did you think he might do?
well, I thought he might create something on the computer that would, I wasn't sure what he was going to do, whether he was going to try and write a will that wrote himself in or cause problems in some way like that. I wasn't sure what his intentions were. But I figured if he hired his own person after Eileen went through all this trouble and went through my brother, which I thought was not proper, he should have gotten the executor's permission to go to the house to look through my mother's computer, or at least got both our permission, and he didn't do that. So I thought something might be going on.
So did you fly to California?
Yes,
And did you hire Mr. Whitkin?
yes.
And did you do what the receipt indicates, which is to ask him to recover files on a hard drive?
Yes.
May I approach you? When he came to the house, did you let him in to look at the computer?
Yes.
And did you stay with him the whole time that he was pulling up whatever information was on the computer?
Not the whole time.
And did he tell you that there was anything in there? Did he tell you if there was anything in there?
He said that there was nothing in there. But
you-
just, there were computer-related things, but nothing that he could see that was personal or of any interest.
Did you ask him to erase whatever was on there?
I did, ask him to erase it.
Did you ask him to erase it in a way that supposedly nobody could tell if it had been erased?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
I wanted him to erase it in a way that it would just look pretty much like nobody had been there at all, actually like nobody had been there at all if he could. And then I would, when Carlos's expert came the next day, I would see what he was up to. And if he came back and said, you know, there was this, I found this on the computer, a letter from your dad saying that I should get this, or what, you know, I wasn't sure, but then I would know that it wasn't true. And he said he felt he could erase it in a way that nobody would find out. So I told him to do that.
And did you subsequently have a discussion with Carlos Menendez about this whole situation?
Yes.
And did you express to him what your concerns had been?
Yes, he was angry that I had done that, and I was angry that he had sort of gone behind Eileen's back and through my brother and not consulted Carlos and I, and it was suspicious, and we had a discussion about it, and you know, I think we understood each other.